Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers that may be viewing this and all of you that are sitting here in our viewing audience. Happy Mother's Day. This is our Mother's Day special, and I had this epiphany, this brilliant idea about having a special called Here's to You, Mom. So if I could pop one of these Coca-Colas open, I would pop it open and take a sip and say, here's to you, Mom, Ada Beatrice Sweet. I don't know if you brought your iPad with you, Jonay. Earlier we were going down memory lane and he was showing me all the pictures of my grandmother, which I affectionately call Mother. She was my grandmother, and that would make her your great-grandmother and your great-grandmother, and my biological mother's mother, but she was actually the person that raised me. And ironically, I would call my biological mother Mama Idella. But here's to you, Mom. And Mom is Ada Beatrice Sweet, that raised me on that 150-acre farm in Rich Bay, Florida, better known as Havana, Florida. And all I can remember is that those sweet arms is what saved me, delivered me, helped me, kept me from the age of 4 when my father passed. And my mother passed at 10, but from the age of 4, I was with my grandmother and grandfather. So there's never a Mother's Day that passes that I don't remember my grandmother. I'm actually sitting here today, which is May 7th. My grandmother on her birthday and on Mother's Day. And her birthday is May 7th. This is May 7th. For my grandmother, Ada Beatrice Sweet. And on Mother's Day, my grandfather, John Emanuel Sweet, would always come with a coconut cake, which you see as one of my props. Somebody's going to enjoy this delectable cake afterwards. I'll make sure I don't consume it. He would come with Almond Joy candy, which was her favorite candy, or orange slices. She absolutely loved them. And I think he kind of cheated on that because he loved the orange slices also. He would also have his dentures out, and he could always chew those orange slices. But all the Coca-Colas, he would come with a 6-pack of what he called Coca-Colas, bring my grandmother a 6-pack of Cokes, and the coconut cake had a red carnation in the middle of it. So it painted a picture in the minds of the grandchildren, which we all called her Mama. Our grandmother was our Mama. She was our mother. So in celebrating Mother's Day, here's to you, Mom. The Coke, the orange slices, the parched peanuts. She was always eating her parched peanuts at 1 o'clock in the morning, 12. Even when I was coming home from college, FAMU campus, sometimes I would think about her. And after I left the library, I would think, let me just go up and talk to Mom. I had my own apartment there in Tallahassee my sophomore year. So I would drive up to Havana, and sometimes at 1 in the morning, I would come in the house, and she was sitting at the table, had nodded off to sleep, and you see the peanut shells on the floor, and she's nodding off, and she has cracked her peanuts. She loved her parched peanuts. So I could not let May 7th pass without thinking about here's to you, Mom, and coming into Mother's Day, here's to you, Mom. I am a praiser today because I heard my grandmother walk through the house as we were going off to sleep. I would hear her sing. She did not have a singing voice, a trained singer, a professional singer, one that could actually keep harmony, or you could tell if she sung soprano, alto, tenor, baritone. And what I'm subject to do, if I'm standing next to a baritone, I'll probably sing baritone. If I'm standing next to a tenor, I will probably sing that. If I'm next to a soprano, I will sing soprano. The only class I've ever failed in my life was music in high school. I received a flat F because I was so nervous, so frightened, so insecure. When the music teacher said, sing your part, Melvin, he had an alto, tenor, soprano, and a bass or baritone. Every time it came to my part, he decided I was an alto. I don't know why. Maybe some of you that know music may know why. Each time I would freeze, couldn't sing my part, wouldn't sing my part. So it's the only course I've ever failed in my life. So to this day, I could copy you. And my grandmother was the same way. She would walk through the house. And I mentioned it in my sermon today. One of the songs she would sing over and over, I'm going to trust. And she sounded like me. Can't sing. In the Lord, I'm going to trust in the Lord. I'm going to trust in the Lord till I die. And she would sing the other part. I'm going to treat everybody right. I'm going to treat everybody right. I'm going to treat everybody right until I die. One of many songs. I would go off to sleep hearing her sing, wake up in the morning and her song woke me up, or her intercession woke me up. It shaped who I am as a pastor, as a prophet, as a minister of the gospel. I'm constantly walking and humming or singing songs. And I fit within that scripture that says songs and hymns and spiritual songs, making melody in your heart. It didn't say you had to be able to hold your part, sing your note, or harmonize. So whoo-hoo, here's to you, Mom. In great memories, in great appreciation, in awe for this wonderful, wonderful person named Ada Beatrice Sweet that raised me, took care of me, the reason I am who I am, the giver, that was her, appreciative, that was her. If I picked a weed out of the yard and brought it to her, she would act as if I gave her 24 roses. Multicolored roses. She would just go on, and I notice I have that same level of gratitude. I am so grateful over the fact that someone thought about me. I'm constantly looking for ways that I can show my appreciation, not just say it, but do it. And that was my grandmother, and a family person, married over 50 years. She didn't believe in, and I'm not taking a jab, or this is not shade, this is just my inheritance. My grandmother loved her children, loved her children's children. My mother was the oldest, had 4 children. My grandmother raised her 4 and raised her oldest daughter's 4 children and loved her children. And I am passionate about my adult children, my grandchildren. I thank God I don't have to raise my grandchildren. All of my children are still here. But every time I think about her, I have to say, once again, toast, here's to you, Mom. You are absolutely the best mom in the world. And I followed her example, modeled what she did, and was determined to be the best mother in the world. And of course, I am the grand. According to little Lindsay, my only daughter's child, says grand. He's never called me grandmother. He just says you're grand, because my daughter said before he was born, you will be grand. And if I had thought of that when I had my grandmother, I would have called her Grand, because she was just absolute. Everybody in the community loved her. We loved her and appreciated her. We wouldn't be who we are today. About the memories, and they remember the woman that I call Mom, Grandma, Mom. I didn't call her grandmother, I always said Mom, but the woman that I call Mom. So I wanted them to share today from a male perspective and from a female perspective how they viewed her, what they saw, what they remembered, because I believe God, and according to my daughter, that her children, our children's children, would always remember me, and I'll always tell she was my grandmother, which would make her Daveron's great-grandmother, Jonay's great-grandmother. But the way we talked about it, if they had never met her, they would know her. Should we start first? Jonay, who pulled up the picture of her. What do you remember about Mom?
I have a lot of spotty memories. She was, I had to have been 9 years old when she passed. So all my memories are from whenever you start to remember up until then. And by the time
So you're younger than you were, than I was when my biological mother passed. Okay. Good memories.
Well, she had already become sick by the time I was born. So she didn't remember names real well.
She had had her second stroke. She had just perfect health prior to that first stroke and that second stroke, which was right in her late 70s, close to 80. So it affected her memory.
So she called me baby. And I can just remember every Friday we went to go get fish. That was one of her favorite foods. She loved fish. My mother would take us and my grandmother to get fish.
From McDonald's, that McDonald's fish sandwich. And I remember us going by there and she's saying, "Where's my fish sandwich?" She looked forward to that McDonald's fish sandwich with the tartar sauce. God save me. Maybe that's why I don't eat them. But I love my grandmother, love the memory of it. But I can remember her eating them and the tartar sauce, and she was so neat and everything and rolled up her little paper so cute afterwards. But what makes you have that memory?
I just enjoyed watching her so much. She would, when she got back to the house, she'd sit in a rocking chair my mother had, and she'd just sit there and rock and hum, and she just seemed so content and so happy. I used to just sit there for the longest and just watch her.
Oh, wow. So both of you were watchers. Is that in our genes, a bloodline, you sitting and watching her? And Daveron, you shared a memory with me about, we were at Virginia's house, I think it was, and you would sit and, well, you tell them.
I don't know what we were there for, but I was at...
I went by to see her because at that time I was living in Panama City, and I always brought my children to go and see, let's go see Mother.
Mm-hmm. And for some reason I would sit in a chair like this beside her, and she'd just be staring off, and I'd just sit real close to her and stare at her hair and her face, because her hair was super long. She would roll it, it was rolled around on top of her head real high, and then I saw them take it down, and I mean, it was like past her butt. Just long, very pretty hair, and I always admired that and liked that, and said, "Oh, when I have a daughter, she's gonna have hair like that. That is so nice. That's in our genes."
So you were a little girl, a dreamer like your mother, already planning what your little girl will be like. Mm-hmm. And you're a little girl yourself, my little girl. So what made you just sit and stare? Did she say something back or to you? How did she react when you would just sit and watch her? And I'm asking you the same question, Jonay, Lawrence Jonay. What did she talk back to you aside from saying, "Hey, baby," or was she irritated by you sitting and watching her?
I think she had had a stroke by that time, so she was nonverbal. She would just sit in the chair and stare, and sometimes she would hum. And so I just thought that was nice. She didn't say anything, but that's what I remember.
You know what? I call that generational singing or generational humming, because oddly enough, coming from downstairs up here to set up for Here's to You, Mom, I noticed I was humming. And I looked back behind me, and little Lindsay was, and that's what caught my attention. I thought, it's the humming family. I don't even know what I was humming, but I noticed that my brother, who is now deceased, he was always humming. So I thought, how exciting is that? That would make little Lindsay the fourth generation. My grandmother, my mother, myself, you, he would be the fifth generation. So he's humming. He's coming out of our bloodline, just walking along humming or singing something. So natural praisers, natural intercessors, are you prone to hum as well?
Yes, I absolutely do. I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. But
so you are definitely related to Ada Beatrice Sweet. Yes, and you're related to me, my nephew.
But I do love to sing and hum and whistle if I can.
Really? Okay. And we weren't allowed to whistle. My grandmother said a whistling woman and a crowing hen never gets out to a good end. Please don't ask me what that means, but that's what she said. So I was an adult before I learned how to whistle. But my daughter has her singing voice from her father's side, so she could actually sing, harmonize, hold the tune, and therefore that little baby Lindsay can actually sing and harmonize and hold the tune as well. But looking at the picture, and let's move forward from my mom, and your memories of your grandmother, how do they match up with your memories of your mom? What would you tell your children when you have your children about Grandma Sweet, which you called her Grandma Sweet, which was actually great-grandma? What would you tell your children about Grand and about your great-grand, great-great-grand?
I would probably tell them my only memory was the memory I shared here about me staring at her and how she looked in her hair, and I would tell them from memory the things that you told me about her, being an intercessor and singing and having a sharp gift where she would dream or see things.
Absolutely.
And I think you told a story about you were thinking about running away and marrying this guy one day, and she just, was humming in the kitchen or something and told you to go get the suitcase from under the house. You're not going anywhere. She would just know things.
That was a great memory. I forgot about that. That was awesome. Sharp discerning of spirit. She could dream so precisely, it would be as if she was in the house with you, which reminded me of the wisdom of Ahithophel. It was if God had spoken. She called me married here while I was married and here in Panama City and said, Vernette Yvonne, I dreamed this, and it would be right on point.
Wow.
But I was in 9th grade. I was 15 years old, and I was in love, I thought. Now, thank you, Jesus, for her discerning of spirits. What in the world would my life have been like? And this guy that I was dating said, let's run away to Miami and get married. I packed my suitcase, and when my grandmother went to sleep, I was supposed to get it from under the house and meet him at the end of the road. I went in the room, pretended to be asleep, and just kept waiting and waiting, and hearing her hum, hearing her sing, thought any minute until finally she opened the room door and said, go get that suitcase from under the house and tell that blank you're not coming. You fill in the blank.
Yeah, Christian.
And that's a good one. That Christian, okay. Good substitute. But I think it was the opposite end of the spectrum. But I was that type child that you could just tell me. And I just said, took the suitcase from under the house, called him and said, I can't come. My grandmother said I can't. And that's what kept me from running away to Miami and getting married. Thank God for discerning of spirits. Woo. Great memory. Thanks for sharing that story.
Great. That's what I would share about Grandmother Sweet. And I would tell my kids about their grand a lot of stories, but I'll mainly, get across to them the same things about prayer, intercession, but not in that order, and how acute her discerning of spirits, or how she's such a sharp seer, how she knows things and perceives them. And even since we were a little child, she would say, when you're in trouble and I'm not there, don't worry. If you can't reach me, reach heaven and heaven will reach me. I'm always on that frequency. She would use those words. I'm always on that frequency. And so even before we really knew that it worked, we would try it all the time. I know I would, and my brothers have told me that they would. I would be, one particular time I was somewhere with a group of people, I think from church, and I don't know, I had an eerie feeling I didn't like the way I felt, or I became nervous. And so I went to the payphone and I called her, and she didn't answer the phone. This was before cell phones. I called the house.
And before caller ID.
Yes. So then I just said, okay. She said if we're in trouble, she's on that frequency, call heaven and heaven will call her. Lord, I need you to call her and let her pay attention to this number, or let her call back or come where I was. We may have had caller ID by then, because she, a few minutes later, maybe 10 minutes later, 10, 15 minutes later, the phone rang, and it was her. And I just started crying, saying, Mom, it worked. I need your help. I'm so glad you answered the phone. And so I knew from a early age that was true. And also, if we're anywhere in the world and we want her or need her, it didn't matter where she was at all or what her load was, We would have little code words. She would very rarely let me spend the night with someone, but every now and then she would. And sometimes I didn't know, or maybe I knew I was a seer then, but sometimes in certain homes or something, I would become nervous and see things, and I would get afraid, and it would be late. I was a late nighter, and everybody in the house would be asleep wherever I went. So I would call my mom, and I would tell her, you know, I know that it's like 3, 4 in the morning, Mom, but I'm really nervous. Can you come pick me up? And I would tell her some kind of, say it in code, where when she came, I would hang up so they wouldn't know that I called her. She'd call back and say, Daveron was on my mind. I need to come and pick her up. And she'd come get me, and I'd be, thank you, Mom. You know, like, so I didn't want them to know that, you know, what was going on, but she would always.
Such a caring child even then and now, that you didn't want them to feel bad.
Yes, I didn't
She
want
would
them
always
to feel
say, Mom,
bad.
I don't want them to feel bad. I don't want them to feel that there's something wrong with their house or something wrong with them. So can you come get me?
Yes, and she would always come and get me. The third thing she would always say, besides reach heaven and anywhere you are in the world, I'm coming. If you need me, call me, was you can always tell me anything. Even if you, God forbid, murdered someone, I'm here. It won't change the way I feel about you. I always love you. You can tell me anything. And so that stuck with me, and I always would. Even in college, when I graduated early, my friends would say, why are you telling your mom these things? And I'm like, well, I always tell her. What difference does it make? Things that I guess younger people wouldn't think you should talk to about your mom, I would just tell her everything.
And I remember that when you were cheering for Florida A&M University, and they were in Virginia playing Hampton. And all of the girls in the hotel, you brought them down to my room, and they asked me, your daughter says she tells you everything. Does she talk to you about sex? And I remember the expression like, really? I can't believe that. They were in a state of shock. Well, can I ask you something? And they started asking me what they would ask their mom. But I thought that was the norm, that you should always have that kind of relationship. And I was the same way with my sons. Tell me anything that's nothing off limits, there's nothing we can't talk about.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, what would you tell little Jonay and little Destiny?
The things that I remember the most were, fortunately, it was some of the things that my mother told me about my grandmother. I love the way that she felt about family, and she demonstrated it. And I can tell that she enforced it in you guys because you enforced it in us. So I would make sure my kids knew how important family is and how important it is to be patient and loving with each other. From everything I've known, she had to have been the most patient person and loving person. She cared for her daughter's children, where there's some grandparents that wouldn't do that. You knew no lack. As a family, you knew no lack, and I admired her for that. I love and admire my mother for the sacrifices that she made for me. They were the first demonstration of God's love to me. So I would make sure that my children know and understand that.
Just before we transition, I also need to salute another person that I would call a surrogate or a secondary mother. After my grandmother passed, do you have that picture of Aunt Virginia and my grandmother? After my grandmother passed, and Jonay showed me the picture today, and which triggered a memory, my Aunt Virginia said to my mother on her deathbed when I was 10 years old, as my mother was leaving here, she said, take care of my girls. Nothing against my brother, baby brother Manuel, but maybe in her heart of hearts, being a woman, she thought about her girls. And Aunt Virginia, as she was leaving here, I had 4 children, she said, take care of Byron. And she was always concerned about Byron. And ironically, Byron said she was his favorite aunt. They had this bond of making sure that he's not overlooked or he doesn't battle because he battled with rejection, so that he knows who he is. So this, my Aunt Virginia, who did what she said to my mom, she bought Gloria, and I always call my only daughter, my baby sister Gloria, she bought all of our school clothes every year, took us on vacation every summer. We went somewhere, so I included vacationing with my children because of my Aunt Virginia. It was important. Every year I took my kids on vacation because Aunt Virginia took us on vacation. I started wearing Estee Lauder perfume because Aunt Virginia wore Estee Lauder perfume. Aunt Virginia was always dressed up before she went out of the house. And my grandmother, you couldn't go out of the house with hair rollers on. You couldn't go out of the house without being dressed to the hilt. So because of Aunt Virginia, because of my grandmother, it was always about my casual was dressing up because of them. I remember how she was with her husband. Did we put the picture? How she was with her husband. So because of Aunt Virginia, and for those that are looking here, that's my Aunt Virginia, and that's my grandmother. So that was Mama, and that's Aunt Virginia. Here's to you, two great heroines of the faith. I loved it. My heroes, great women. Happy Mother's Day. Aunt Virginia, happy birthday. Grandma, Mom, and I don't believe in talking to the dead, but I'm just simply saluting the memory of them. Their memory still makes me smile, still keeps me warm. Every time I think about them, I feel so loved, so grateful, so protected. So if you're watching and you may have had, both of these people have passed, and you may have someone that's passed, instead of being sad on Mother's Day, go down memory lane and think about all the wonderful memories and all of the great characteristics you have, how your life is the way it is in a great way because of that person. And instead of crying, go out and buy their favorite food or favorite drink. If you're not going to get inebriated, buy their favorite drink that won't make you sin. And get with people that will laugh, like I'm with Jonay. I know he would appreciate it. I'm with Daveron. I know she will appreciate it. My other children out of town. Marcus is in Atlanta, which I know I'll have a great gift from him on Mother's Day. Gerard's in Atlanta. Hey, I'm always trying to gain from them. I always tell them what I want. One year, I told them I wanted a cruise, and they all got together and paid for the cruise. And they roped Jonay in on that as well. So I'm so blessed. Great nephew, great children, and just a wonderful grandchildren. I am the grand because of the powerful women that was in my life.